Right, we're just going to look at Apache Kafka producers and consumers. So here I've got a producer on the right and a consumer on the left. Don't think of this just as a one-to-one relationship. There could be many, many more producers and many, many more consumers. That's one of the things around Kafka and using this distributed system. I mean, Zookeeper has its pedigree in Hadoop and the likes. So this is all about distributed control and therefore allowing us to address and effectively use distributed processing across a number of different stores, effectively, different brokers, dependent upon the way the topic has been set up in terms of how it's partitioned, how it's replicated, and therefore then how it's distributed across the brokers. So there's a highly distributed sort of environment here which we're taking advantage of, even though it looks like I'm only talking to one broker at each end of this. But of course the information, as we saw in earlier topics, is actually distributed across those as per the replication and partition requirements when the topic was built. The fact that we're talking to one of the brokers and then that information is being passed across is tantamount to the fact that it actually works. So I've got a producer, and that producer is actually talking through to broker 21. Broker 21 is on the second server, and we can see that by the IP address that it's using, which is the same as that server, and the port number 9092, which is the port that broker 21 is listening on. So that's how we're able to do that. On the other side of the equation, we've got the sort of consumer. Now the consumer doesn't have to be there. The consumer can be absent and actually come back later and then start asking for records. Each of the records is actually stamped with an integer number, so the sequence. And therefore we can actually come back and ask for a certain point in the sequence. I've sort of, the first line actually is from where we are now, I'll consume everything. And the second one is an example whereby we can go back through that sequence. In fact, I'm going right the way back to the beginning. So from the beginning, as opposed to say from a particular record number. If this was an application running this, of course, it would be probably because the consumers sort of had to restart or something. And then when it comes back online, it can actually then pull that data out of the cluster by going back to a certain point. So from beginning, we'll get everything. And you could do that. Switch the consumer off, switch the producers off, switch the producers back on, switch the consumers back on. The thing is that the data store is always there, and then the producers are adding to it and the consumers are reading whatever's there, and they can go back historically and reread that information. There are exceptions to that. You can actually set retention times on the actual information you're putting there. So you want maybe a retention time of a few hours, in which case it's available to you, and then it's lost. That will then obviously prevent the storage from getting very large, depending upon the retention values that you use and whether you do that across one or more topics. It's entirely up to you how you dimension it. But of course, then that data is lost historically if the retention time is there and you let it expire. But we could have this so that it never expires. So we just add more and more data to the heap and we're able to then come back and consume that from different points. And we can consume multiple topics. We're just doing this on the basis that we're consuming one topic. An application could consume multiple topics, and taking the information out of the topic doesn't have to take all of the data that's presented. Of course, it could filter that as it comes in, but we're just seeing this in the raw. So we're seeing a producer on the right and a consumer on the left. The producer is writing to broker 21 and the consumer is reading from broker 0. Does it work? Well, we'll try and find out. And this is all for the topic, my first topic. Now, how was that distributed? Well, in fact, my first topic was distributed something like this. So there were two partitions and they were distributed across the available brokers that we had. So we'll see a distribution across a number of those nodes. So we could indeed produce here and consume here because those brokers are actually engaged. So that's sort of practical in that sense. So let's have a go and see what we can make it do. So we need something to act as the producer and act as the consumer, and for that purpose all we need, of course, is a couple of putty terminals. So we'll bring those into play. So we're just using a couple of screens here. So we've got these active screens, and we'll use the one on the left hand side as my producer. We'll modify the screen size in just a second. So what we're looking at here is, again, see where we are. Now we're in Kafka, which is good. So into the bins and have a look for our Kafka console producer, which is probably enough now to not go ping. And we're looking at setting out the broker list. So in terms of brokerage, we could broker across a number of devices. We'll probably just use the one for now, but you could actually have these as a comma separated list. So 235, that's where it is, 9092. In fact, no, let's go to, in line with ours, 215 and 9092. That'll put it onto broker 21, okay, because it's on the other server. So that's going to be my producer. I could have other producers, just put a comma in there and start tapping in the name or number. Could have 235 9092, and that would now be broker 0. So you could add those in as that list, hence the name of broker list. And then, of course, we need to identify the topic. So we could do my first topic, and assuming that's everything is good, we should see a greater than sign. Brilliant. Right, so let's put some things in here. So probably the first message we got was alarm 1 was on, and that was followed by alarm 2, followed by a fire alarm, which is worrying. And then maybe those alarms cleared. Yeah, they are cleared because the building had burnt down. Might be a timeout. Anything. They're just messages that are now written into my first topic. So let's set a consumer up. And the consumer side that we can see here is again back into bin. Still in the same area, of course, so we're still talking about Kafka as we did before. It's a console consumer. I did spell that right, just checking. We need to set up the bootstrap. So a slight change in terminology. Server, same place, 192.168.1.235. Oh, sorry. Where are we going? So this is where this is where we have to make sure we got this right. Remember, the producer is on 215, and indeed this is on 235. Port number is going to broker 0, so that's 9092. Broker 2 9093. Broker 3 9094. And then topic, and the topic, of course, that I want to consume is my first topic. I'm just going to do it this way first, so we'll see what happens. Nothing, which is correct. So I'll just bring the screen down so we can see the start of the other screen. Stay where you are, lad. Didn't ask you to move. I'll just bring this one across as well. It's about half. There we go, we'll give them a share of the screen. So, but what we'll notice is if I press return a couple of times, off it goes, line out, there we go. Okay, so things are happening. Okay, let's exit out of there, and let's start it again, but we'll start it from the beginning. Okay, so off it goes, and there we go, we get them all. So this is, you know, evidence that we can go back through because the history is still there. Again, assuming we haven't set a retention timeout period. So we can keep those two going quite happily, and away they go. So those are resident on the same box. So they just talk to each other locally. I'm going to bring in another terminal here. We'll just overlap. Let's do an ifconfig just to prove where it is. It's on 215. Good. It's in the Kafka directory, which is excellent. And what I'm going to make this one, I'm going to make this also a consumer. So it's a Kafka console consumer. And we'll just make that happen as it should do. Now just make sure I've put that right. No, I haven't. Getting a bit ahead of myself. I thought indeed. It's always worth doing a little tab now and again just to see if it's going astray, because of course it's all in the bin directory. So getting complacent there, not putting it on. So we're looking at a bootstrap server, and again 192.168. Now, we're a consumer. Where do I want to consume from? Do I want to consume, should I try from my own local server, or shall I try from a remote server? Remember, this one is actually a screen from 215. So 235, and shall I go to the 9092? Well, that's currently being used, so let's give it a go. And topic, my first topic. Let's have a look, see what we get. Right, now nothing. But let's see. Let's clear an alarm. Okay, and see what happens. Indeed, there it is. So it's actually appearing now on both of these. Remember, what I didn't do, if I go back up, what I didn't do at the end of here is I didn't do, where I wanted it to start. So I'm just using one of the keyword elements we can use, because it makes things quite easy for me. And there you go, exactly the same look and feel. Okay, now that was pertinent, because that was really sort of addressing the same point. So let's see if we can play with this a little. What if we go to 9093? Now 9093 is associated with broker 2. So again, from the beginning. Yep, that works. And what about 9094? And again, that works. Good. So what about if we addressed it to a different IP address, which was 215? Now 215 is only listening on 9092. Boom, it's part of the set. So yep, it's known as part of the cluster. So therefore we can actually get this to work, because effectively all we're doing here is, in essence, is we're going via a broker, but we're effectively addressing the leader each time. So it's the leader that's giving us the information. So producers produce the information, and that effectively gets through to the leader, which then is responsible for storage. That's the leader within the actual partitions and replicas that we saw within the partition work that we did earlier. So that's all working. So we've got now is a situation where I've got effectively one producer, and I've got two consumers which are getting the same sort of information. So we should see that happening. In fact, we should see that happening all the way through. So let's just do another alarm just to see if everybody's getting the same output. Yes, they are. So a couple of returns. Yep, that seems to be working fine. What about a second producer? What about a second producer? So hopefully here's an aptly sort of positioned. It's on 215, look. Okay, so I'll have a little bit of a play. So we're in Kafka, so into the old bin again. Remember that this time. And we want to be another producer. So it's a Kafka console producer. Good, tab work this time. So we need a broker list. And we're going to do the whole 9 yards on this one. So 192, 198, 168, 1 dot. Now, we've already got one talking to broker 21, haven't we? So this is on the remote machine. So let's have this one talking to the other machine, and we'll go to 9093. Why not? Find out in a minute. First topic. So it's the same topic. Okay, and away we go. Boom, greater than sign. Right, so if we watch the outputs, which is the screen at the top and the screen bottom right, because they're both consumers of, press return, and off they go. So line 0 error, and there they go. So we can have alarm 21, and there they go. So we can have a number of producers and a number of consumers effectively looking at the same topic. And that's the general idea. Yeah. Notice that we'll just follow whatever comes in first. okay, as far as those producers are concerned. Good. So that's the sort of stuff that you can do with this system, and you know, have a good little play with setting up a multitude of different producers and consumers across your cluster. A couple of extra things at the bottom of here. If we need to delete a topic, and what I found this one seems to work, is use the delete keyword, Zookeeper. I've used localhost in this case. Obviously use that with caution, depends whether you're local or remote. It does catch us out, caught me out a couple of times. Topic and then my first topic, and that should get rid of that one. We could see that in a moment if you like. And then what we could see here is the way to stop a server and the way to stop Zookeeper. So you stop servers by identifying their server properties file. Right, okay. I think a bit of time to play. Here's our 4 screens again. And as we can see, we've got a couple of producers, remember, the one bottom left and the one that we added over the overlay one. So again, you know, alarms appearing here. Okay, so those will appear out. So these are pertinent to that particular topic, which is my first topic. So I'm just going to squeeze this one across a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of this one. So Control C out of there. And we can see it should still be working. So there's the alarm. So that, you know, one of the producers has gone fine, because you know, at the end of the day the data store's there, and that's the thing that's really at the centre of all of this, really at the centre of all the sort of big data stuff that's going on. So what I would like to do is consider actually taking one of those commands that we just looked at and killing the topic midstream. Okay, so I'm just going to bring the command in, so I'll just drag this across a little way so we can see it. There we go, it's executing in the background. So it says this is the delete of the topic. The topic is on that particular. Now remember, if you're local, that's fine, but if you're remote, then you need to put the IP address in of where Zookeeper is, and then the topic itself is my first topic. So what I can see here is it actually says I'm going to queue that for deletion. So it takes some time to be deleted, but as you can see, things have died in the meantime. Yep, the producer's sort of sitting there, thinks it's going. Oh, there we go. So there's errors now because we're trying to actually send that through. So that topic no longer exists. And we can sort of back that up with some of the other commands that we've been looking at as well. So we can bring in, remember, our Zookeeper shell command through to the local host. We're on the local host, and we can list the topics. Well, let's put brokers in there first. Topics, and that should work. There we go. So we can actually have a look and see what it thinks about that. Now it actually seems to suggest that my first topic is still in there. Okay, so it seems to suggest it's still in, even though we had problems. So let's go and have a look. So earlier command that we used on here was as a producer. So let's produce to that first topic, and let's try and consume to that first topic. Okay, let's have a go. And again, it is working, right? It is working. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit. So Control C, Control C, Control C, and Control C. So that was our early options as we had, that were all the consumers and producers, 2 of each. So I'm going to go back, list the topics, still there. I'm going to try that delete again and see if that works this time. So looking at the delete command that we have here, let's be absolutely sure. Delete Zookeeper, seems to be all spelled correctly, localhost, and there we go. Let's try again. So we're going to have a list of that, see if it's gone. There we go, gone. I think that's because it's it's basically been locked because there are people who are actually are using it. So we'll have to clear them off first. So we can easily get rid of their processes, remote accesses and the like, and then go in and actually remove the topic. Good. So that's one of the commands. I won't go through the other two per se because those are really for the sort of server section. But remember those commands as well for server stop and zookeeper stop, and we can find those all in bin. So if we have a look, we can see all of those executable elements that are in here, and that includes the likes of our server stop and our server start. Yeah, and of course we've got the same for zookeeper as well. We've been using the zookeeper shell command with some of those other bits and pieces that we did. Okay, good. Well, reflection, I think that's probably enough for now. That gives us certainly an inroad into the other ways of doing things. There are various websites out there with lots of tutorials and bits and pieces which can get you going once you've got the sort of basic elements sort of up and running. So sort of terminology abounds, as you'll see, and that'll probably take a little bit of time to get used to. And there's various terms on top of this that are probably related to more the environments where they come from and a sort of sense of terminology as well. So, go and have a look, have a play and enjoy. Bye for now.